Mate, the ball went in, the noise was like bonkers, and I had no idea who'd scored the goal, but I thought I'd just sent my new club down. That's what I thought. I was like, if I could have left planet Earth then, I would have done, without a care in the world.
On this episode of In the Loop with Nedum Onuoah, we talk about some gold dust memories from his 188 appearances in the Premier League, probably the single greatest moment in sporting history, with Aguero scoring in Man City's winner to win the league, and we get his perspective on a very interesting clash with Zlatan Imbrahimovic. Check it out.
This is In the Loop with Jack Blake, an Indy 11 podcast. We bring you an insight into the lives of professional athletes with an emphasis on the mental side of sports.
Welcome to episode 3 of In the Loop. On today's episode, it gives me great pleasure to introduce a former Premier League legend with Manchester City, getting over 188 appearances in the Premier League. He also captained England under-21s at youth international level, and he has over 400 high-level professional appearances. He is now working as a television pundit for ESPN. Most importantly, he is one of the most genuine people I've ever met, and someone who I call a friend with pleasure. Let me introduce to you, Nedum Onuoah.
Do you know what? You're good at that. For episode 3, that's very good, mate. That's very, very good. I appreciate that. I think Premier League legend is a bit of a reach, but I tell you what, 188 those games is a lot when you think about it. I appreciate that.
Legend status, mate. Legend status.
Appreciate it, mate.
Thanks for coming
It's good to see you. It's good to see you, man.
It's been a long time since we've been on a podcast together.
I know. Back in the day, it was me speaking to a younger you, but now here's older you speaking to an even older me.
Yeah, both hairlines getting worse.
Oh, mate. Getting older and older. This is the way it goes. This is life. It gets you.
I've got so much to talk to you about, so many questions. Let's start right at the beginning. Please don't hate me if I butcher this, but Warri, Nigeria?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Warri, Nigeria. 37 years young. What was it like for you growing up in Nigeria, and how long were you there?
Do you know, I was only there for 5 or 6 years. And, you know, when you're younger, that's a long time. But when I'm now 37 and I've got a 10-year-old and I've got a 5-year-old and I've got a 6-year-old, and they don't remember even living in America, for example, like they did for the first 3-4 years of their lives, you realize that there are a few little memories in there, but you can't really feel it. You can't really describe it properly because at the time, you don't even know the right words to be able to describe what you feel or what you see. But looking back, when I look at pictures, look at my family, look at extended family, look at the way that we live, listen to my parents or my dad talk about those stories from back then. It's a big part of my identity, to be honest. Like, even though I sound like this, I've been raised in Manchester. Like, if you're born in Nigeria, when you say home to someone from Nigeria, you're talking about Nigeria. Yeah. You're not talking about the house you live in Manchester or anywhere else on planet Earth. It's Nigeria. So yeah, it's came over as a kid. One of the biggest memories is going to school in Manchester, like in September, in about 10 jumpers, because I thought this cold is a disgrace.
Yeah.
But yeah, good memories of being a child, just, you know, being part of my family in Manchester, which wasn't like a Mancunian family at all. It was very much a Nigerian household that was in the heart of Manchester. But you know, times have changed, and now I can call this place my home as well.
When was the last time you went back?
Funny that you should say that. So my 3 sisters, they've all been back. My dad went back loads. My mum went back before she passed. Extended family, but I have not been back yet. And interestingly, the plan is to go back in the next, say, 12 months or so. But the thing about Nigeria, as I'm sure anyone from Nigeria will tell you, it's never as simple as you believe it to be. Yeah. It's not one of those places where you can just say, I'm just going to fly back and there'll be no stress. My dad will want me to be doing stuff. Aunts, uncles, like extended family type things, knowing the right places to go. Like, I think because it's not in sort of like the eyes of many on a day-to-day basis, I think people also forget how big it is. We're talking about a country with a population of 200 million. Like, obviously USA is 330, but like for people in the UK, it's just Nigeria. Yeah. 200 million people. Yeah, it's not the type of place where you turn up and just everything makes sense. I think you need to know what you're doing, otherwise you could be in trouble.
Yeah. And I remember from talking to you about it before, but when you were young, your parents were fairly strict, weren't they? And they wanted to make sure you educationally you got the grades before you could kick a ball. How was that? How was that transition to playing football managing the school life and stuff like that with a strict household?
Well, it's funny because, when you think about as a child what you do manage, the answer is you don't really manage anything because everything's managed for you. Like you've got your kids, I've got my kids. Realistically, are they pulling strings and calling shots?
Sometimes.
Or they just, well, I don't know, man. It's like you give them, it's almost like you make them believe that they're in control of things, but in reality, it's always you.
Yes.
And I think going back to then, school was always the most important thing, always. Like the football side of things in sport, like I was very good at sport, whatever I was doing, but I was doing it as an extra, not as the main thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So it didn't matter whether I was in the academy. Like I joined City's Academy when I was 10. I was doing athletics from like 12, 13. I was one of the quickest in the 100 meters in the country. I was doing really well. Like I was, quite a nice moment, the time of this. I was at my dad's house, which is where I used to live. It's actually next door to where I live now. And I was showing my 3 kids some of the medals and trophies and stuff I won as a kid. And I remember, like, I was winning so much stuff, mate. So much stuff. It was class.
Yeah.
But it was never without having the ability to do well at school. Because if I wasn't trying hard in school and doing well, like, I'm not going to that football game on the weekend, mate.
Yeah, you weren't able.
There's no say. How am I getting there?
Yeah.
I got no money. I got no lift. I got no boots. Like, I've got no chance, mate. But if I stuck to the right things, and to be fair, I think those principles, to me, they mattered because they made me always appreciate what I was doing. It was never an expectation to go and play. It was always really fun to go and play because I'd earned the right to be there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, quickest 100 meters. What year was that, and what was the official timing for that?
So, I finished second as an under 15 in the English schools. I was 11:09. The winner was a guy called Wade Bennett Jackson who ran 11:07. And I think I was joint time with a guy called Craig Pickering who ran for Great Britain in the 100. Ended up doing like bobsleigh as well. Like he was the proverbial off a shovel. Like he was so quick. But that was my section. In fairness, that year, if there's probably stuff I could have done better to have helped me win that, because athletics wise, I never took it seriously as such because I only did it in the summer when football was off. But then the next year, I finished 4th, I think it was again. And I didn't really progress as much as say some of the other people because now Craig Pickering was like, he was even quicker. But the year after that, I was already playing full time. I was a YTS at City. So just when other people start to commit to it when they were going to college, I was getting paid £80 a week to go and play.
Clean some boots in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so like I was good. I think my best time was probably like a 10:09, and this was like as a 15, 16-year-old.
Wow.
And there was obviously a lot of potential there, but ultimately, like football, it looked after me for 20 years, you could say.
Oh yeah. Was there a moment where you thought, is there ever a chance the Athletics were going to take over?
Negative, mate. There was a point where I thought, it's a shame that I can't do athletics this summer. But then all of a sudden I'd be doing like a pre-season in Italy or something, or Switzerland. And he's like, well, it's not the worst thing in the world, is it? And then I was very fortunate because I made my debut at 17. So it was only 2 years out from retiring. How stupid does that sound? 2 years out from stopping doing athletics that I was playing in the Premier League. So, there's not really a lot of time to regret. Yeah, I know. It's crazy, isn't it? You're right.
I've had some, so we've had 2 episodes before this, and I've had some really interesting chats about the academy structure and the academy system. What was if you could sum up your academy experience in a few words, how would you sum it up?
I think from when I joined the academy, things were changing a little bit, because at City, for example, when I first joined, it was a centre of excellence and it turned into an academy. I was the first signing when it became that. And at that point, there weren't tons of people coming through, but within a few years, the standard in the academy had increased so much to where there was a real pathway to get there at that point. Sean Wright-Phillips was one of probably the biggest star within that, former Forest guy, got released, got told he wasn't good enough by Paul Hart, but, apparently he's good enough to play for Chelsea, being an international, but we don't need to get into that.
Football's a matter of opinion, we all know that.
No, mate, not every opinion's right, but it certainly is about opinion. But quite a few people started to come through, and we got better and better as an academy. We started to have more players who were able to play in the first team, to be able to go elsewhere and play. More people that had like long careers, because then next thing, within a few years, you're looking at the likes of Micah Richards, Stephen Islands. You could probably say myself, Ishmael Millers, Kasper Schmeichel. He was in my academy team. That's Kasper Schmeichel that's won a Premier League away from City. He's won an FA Cup away from City. It's a full Danish international. Yeah. I think he's played 100 games now for them. So it changed a lot, but it's not changed to the point to where it is now, whereby an academy is a huge opportunity for people to profit as such.
Hmm.
I personally think that these days better players are formed, but opportunities to play for their teams are less if they're at a club that's got the resources. And I don't know if you'd agree again, but say if you're at Man City, for example, if it doesn't work out there, the next step down is to basically every football club that's available.
Hmm.
Whereas
Hmm.
from back when, I don't think it was. And I think as I look at young people now, well, not everyone, I think a lot of people have aspirations to make it into that first team and be the next Phil Foden, to be the next Rico Lewis or something like that. But realistically, if you're in an academy, you're in there to try and potentially have a career.
Hmm.
And I think the higher up the academy you go to now, the greater the chances that you'll be able to do that.
I would
Yes,
agree.
the resources. You go on.
I would definitely agree with that. I think from when I was in the academy at Forest, I think it was still around the period of time where you could cling on to the fact that it was renowned for producing players. It was renowned for having a sort of a good pathway to get to the first team. But then I think what didn't help my situation as a young player coming through was we had maybe 8 first team managers in the space of 3 or 4 seasons.
Yeah.
And it was like a revolving door of managers. So for me as a young player, every opportunity I got to try and impress a first team manager was like you had to take every opportunity. If you didn't grasp it with both hands, it was like gone, the next one. You start all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that quite difficult mentally, really, as well, because as a young player, you want to impress as much as possible, but you're also still developing as a human. And some of the decisions I made back when, whether it was just, I remember an incident where I was maybe 15, 16, and I was just become a youth team player, and I'd been doing some extra training, and I was the last one to go to lunch. And we were sat in the canteen, and there was multiple tables. I didn't know which table to sit at. So I'd gone to get my lunch, come sat down. Unbeknown to me, I'm sat at the first team table. I'm a 15, 16-year-old player. I've got a few first team lads. I remember putting my plate down, looking up to eat. And some of the first team lads couldn't believe that I'd sat down at their table. And then I suddenly realised, and I was like, I shouldn't be here. But no one tells
Yeah.
you those things, do they? It's like,
No, no. I think for me, being a bit older in the world of football and obviously very young in life itself, like with young people, they only know what they know.
hmm
They don't know things until they get a chance to experience it. Like you can tell them, but they won't feel it. And like a young person as well, especially the ones coming through the academies who've done well for years, like why would they ever not believe that they're good enough to be in the first team or to be at the next level? Because I'm the best at this. I should be here. And as soon as you have those ideas of should in your mind, that's when your sort of perception can be quite warped. Because all the senior ones ahead of you, they know what's required to be successful or to even be there. And I think the point you made about managers coming in and out, I not only think that's a problem for academies, I think that's a problem for clubs in general. Like, is there any surprise that, say, in the Premier League, for example, the 2 most successful clubs in recent years, in fact, you could say the top 3 now, how long have their managers been there for? You start to get an understanding about what the culture is at the football club. But when managers change all the time, the culture changes all the time because the person's being brought in, more often than not, is being brought in to make changes. So whatever was there before, they don't want to stand by that. They want to say, "Oh, this is fine." That's the last thing they want to do. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I think being in the academy for these guys now, at Arsenal, at Liverpool, at City, like a manager's seen people. Like there are videos of Phil Foden ball boying,
yeah,
you know, and like Guardiola would have seen him when he was like 14, 15. He
yeah,
knows him.
yeah, of
You know what
course
I
he does,
mean?
yeah,
Doesn't
yeah,
just
yeah,
hasn't seen him before. He knows him.
yeah,
And that gives you the best opportunity in my mind because people can see the warts and stuff, but then also see the like benefit of who you are as well.
yeah.
But when people come in and out, there's no chance of that at
Well,
all.
that's like, I don't know if you can bring yourself to say the name of the club, but I'll say it for you. But Manchester United are probably going through that same
Mate.
era right now where it's like revolving door. They're falling out with players, players getting in trouble, players getting sidelined, told not to come into training, just weird things that go on when new managers come in. Like, why does that happen?
So do you know what? I think that's a good question. Every place itself is ultimately different, but a lot of people, I don't know, you maybe would agree with this, maybe you wouldn't. But when you arrive in a sort of team environment, like everyone, if you as a young person, you assume everyone's there for the same reason, but realistically they're not. and people are going through different things. There's some people who've had to travel around most of their careers who just want to settle. People who maybe want to use this as a stepping stone. People who are from the city who are like obsessed with the football club. People who just want to, you know what I mean, work as hard as they can to pay bills. People who are good professionals. People who are really emotional. You know, there's so many different personalities, but the thing that can unite you is winning. So when you take away the winning, all of a sudden you see people's personality traits and the things that inspire them to go forward. All of a sudden, the guy that leaves training 1 minute after it's finished looks like they don't care because you're losing.
Yeah.
But when you're winning, it's like, oh, this guy, he's up again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, this, you know, you start to realize all the flaws in people, as I say, when you start to get frustrated about things not going well. And I think when you look at United as well, there's a bit of player turnover and such. But as I say, losing, like we play football because we want to win. Unfortunately, you don't always get the chance to do that. But then when you start losing, you start to revert to what you are as a person, who you believe in. Like there was a point when I was at QPR, for example, and we had a really bad season, 2014-15. But we had like an Esteban Granero, who's a good friend of mine who played for Real Madrid. And we had a Clint Hill, who's a friend of mine who played in League One, League Two.
Centre-back.
Like
Clint
centre-back,
Hill.
yeah.
He was at Forest, wasn't he?
Yeah, I
For a
think he
little
might have
bit.
been.
Yeah.
But when things get tough, it's time to show personality. What does personality mean to these two people? Esteban wants to receive the ball under pressure. Clint Hill wants to just put as much pressure as he can on the opposition and not take any risks whatsoever. But when they're on the field at the same time, trying to find a way to win together, all of a sudden everything, like if Esteban comes short for the ball, Clint's like, no, let's just go long. But then now Esteban's getting frustrated with Clint and Clint's getting upset with Esteban.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so then imagine that on a larger scale, because again, like I stand by this because of the fact that I've had to cover them. United are the most covered and talked about club in the world for all the wrong reasons, because you can say that scale-wise, you know, they're like Real Madrid are one. United, Liverpool, they're like top five or whatever. But Real Madrid win, Liverpool win, you know what I mean? All these Barcelona, these teams win. United don't really win that much. So the scrutiny's there.
Currently.
If you slip, if you make a mistake, if there's a rumor, if somebody farts in the tunnel at Old Trafford, mate, before you know it, it's getting covered.
Yeah, yeah.
So when there's that level of scrutiny and like people leaking information, leaking messages, oh, we like the manager, we don't like the manager, this is no good, that's no good. And before you know it, that environment can be quite toxic. And even though like you want to get along with people, it's not fun to be losing and to be criticized more than any other club in the world, I'd say.
Yeah. I think, like we said before, football's a matter of opinion. I think you just touched on there that the management and some managers can love players, some managers think the opposite. What would your advice be to anyone listening to this who might be at a club who thinks the manager's not having them, or the manager, maybe they're not in favour? What would you say are the most difficult times you've gone through in your playing career where you felt you didn't really feel the love from the manager, and how did you mentally deal with that?
So the time specifically for me was when Roberto Mancini came in at City after Mark Hughes, because I was playing under Mark Hughes at City. This was after the takeover. We'd played the season in the UEFA Cup, made it to the quarterfinals. I was doing really well. I was on the verge of signing a new deal, possibly did sign one. And then Mancini came in, and then I was out. And I was like out. It was not even an option, mate. So for me to all of a sudden be sitting as like, he used to travel with 20 people, but only have 18 spots available for the starting 11 and bench. And I started to travel around knowing I'd be 19 and 20. Just knew it.
Yeah.
But again, these were with the same group of players that I was starting with, like literally a month earlier. And I really struggled then. I think the reason I really struggled, first was the fact that I was a homebody. I was in Manchester. City was my club. You know, here's this new guy that's come in and he's pushing me to the side. And I struggled to deal with that. And not least of all, because with Roberto, he made the team successful because he coached us to within an inch of like our lives and whatever. But he never brought closure. And I think closure is a thing that people will sort of, I think, be able to handle better. Like
Maybe
if
be able to accept it.
Not necessarily accept, but this is the thing. So one of my really good friends, he's an agent, is Peter Morrison. And he once taught me that when you're not in the team, the best thing to do isn't to go and tell a manager that you should be playing. It's to ask them what you need to do to play. Because then it drops it on their toes to where if they don't think you're ever going to play, they'll tell you. But if they say something that you need to get better at and you work at it, then you get the effort side of things and the attainment side of things. And before you know it, you get opportunity. That's like a sort of like building a bridge as opposed to, criticizing the manager, because a lot of players can be very frustrated with managers when they're not being selected.
Yeah.
So I think when you're out of it, I think it matters to try and find out why. I think people overall, unless they're like really, really callous and hate talking to people, they'll offer you some level of insight. And if a guy says, your crossing's not good enough, you might think it's good enough. So what you'll do, if you want to stay there and if you want to play, is you try and put an emphasis into that in training. So he sees you doing it, and it's like, oh yeah, he's getting better at crossing. So now if you're not playing again, you'll go and ask him, so what can I do now? Then, the honesty arrives at that point. And I think it's just a way of managing, in my opinion, when you're disappointed, when you're down, trying to figure out where you stand within that group and figuring out what you need to do to get the chance to play. Because unfortunately, this is one of the reasons why I'm not manager. You make 11 people happy every week, and then you break the hearts of about 10, 15 others. Yeah. And that's not a good position to be in, is it? You know what I mean? So the best ones are the ones who find a way to keep those other ones involved, keep them sharp, mentally good, and so on, because you do need everyone. So yeah, I think I would say, just as I say, if you can, speak to the manager, see what they think, see what they want, see if you can do it, whether you agree with them, whether you don't. If you don't, and you say it's not going to work, and they say it's not going to work out, then you know what the next step's going to be, because you won't be able to prove them wrong, but you can prove yourself right by going to do it somewhere else.
I 100% agree with that. I think it's always best to look inward rather than outward for blame. And like you said, you go and work on something. So say you're told that the crossing needs to improve. The worst thing that can happen is that you get better at crossing from doing all the extra practices.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know there's obviously periods of time as well where there's frustrations as a footballer through opinion. I don't know if you know this, but it's the Kevin Keegan anniversary today of the famous interview. I really hope.
Yeah. I'd love it if we beat them.
I'd love it if we beat them. Who was your favourite manager to work under?
I'm glad you mentioned Keegan, because I feel really fortunate to know that I made my debut under Kevin Keegan, a former England manager and one of the greats of British football. I literally, he saw something in me, brought me into the first team and played me. And he played me in some big games. I remember one in particular. I didn't start the season, then I got involved, and then next thing I was sitting on a team bus on the way to Highbury to go and play Arsenal, mate. I was sweating on the bus, oh my gosh. This is the year after Invincibles Arsenal. So this is Thierry Henry down the left wing with Pires, Ashley Coles, Vieira's, mate, surreal. As an 18-year-old, surreal. For the record, we drew 1-1. But I think in terms of favourites, Kevin Keegan wanted you to play and to enjoy your football. I really enjoyed that, but I didn't have him for long enough. But then I also was coached by Sven-Göran Eriksson, another former England manager, and unfortunately, it seems like his days on earth are limited because of his illness, which is a great shame. Yeah, because he's one of the nicest people you could ever meet, and he wanted you to be the best that you could be. He wanted you to play football and enjoy it, but also work hard as well. I want you to enjoy being part of a team. So I loved that side of it. And then I had Mark Hughes for 2 spells. I think he's one of the big reasons I went to QPR after I left City, is because my career can be split in half to the point where first half of my career, I played some games, but I was injured for some. Second half of my career, I was available for the vast majority of them. And some of that came off the back of how Mark Hughes introduced a level of professionalism to the club and made you think about football beyond just turning up, playing, and then going home. And I think he was very important for my career, because it got to a point where one of the highlights I had at QPR, barring 10 years ago to the day, winning the playoff final, was 2 seasons later. I played in every minute of every game in the season and did every training session. And as I walked off the pitch on that last game as captain as well, I was I never thought that would be me, given some of the time I spent in the injury room early doors. But my approach that season was what gave me the opportunity, both in terms of general play, form, being the captain, and health and availability. And I think Mark Hughes is very big at showing the things that you need to do that. Because to reference a point again quickly, when I played England under 21s, James Milner would always be the most hydrated when we would do the tests, the day after and whatever. And we used to call him busy. this is James Milner that's still playing in the Premier League now, and I retired 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly, you know what I mean? You start to realize in time that he was doing something which was going to set him up for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
As opposed to us thinking, oh, just get to sleep, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's interesting, that busy word. I remember that when I was younger, and it was almost like you were looked down upon, or you were taking the mick out of for doing extra, or, you know, I was called busy a lot when I was in the youth team because I would do extra work, and to some extent I was taken out of school early, and maybe the club, it looked like to other players, the club were favouring me, and the word busy was thrown around. And so it's interesting you say that, because that rings very true through my veins, because it makes me sort of, gets my blood boiling a little bit. You know, it's like, why should you ever make players feel like they're doing, for them looking after themselves or doing extra? They should never be made to feel, but it's just the outsider, isn't it? And it probably comes from a little bit of jealousy.
100%. And I think interestingly, like, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I feel like the idea of someone being busy kind of fell away when Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi become two of the best players in the world, because they love their football. Ronaldo's doing extras all the time. So all of a sudden it's cool to try and imitate your heroes.
Yes.
Whereas, you know, respectfully, like, if we want to talk about England in the 90s, for example, we're talking about Gaza and other people like this who had a slightly different culture to, say, what Ronaldo's and Messi's and that sort of foreign influence had within English football. And I think for most of us, myself included, like, it would spread from there. Because you start seeing, like, it's like Arsene Wenger, that Arsenal team, Mourinho, when he comes in, brings in like a bit of a Portuguese revolution. Like, if you're not doing something after training now, people perceive you to not want to be there. The standard's different now. Are you trying to get the very most out of yourself? Because that 1% could be the difference between you playing, not playing, or the team doing well, you not doing well. Look at Arsenal this year. Set piece specialist. 10 years ago, that's like, oh, Stoke City. It's, you know what I mean? It's Bolton. But they know there's, listen, mate, like, if they win the league, it might be because they're really good at corners. Like, what a wild thing to say. But you know what I mean? You've probably seen yourself, though, when it comes down to set pieces. Like, people do it on a Friday after training. Half the people are switched off. They've logged off, mate.
Yeah, having a chat. Yeah.
Having a chat, mate. So I'll just do this, and then I'll just do that. And yeah. I used to hate it, not least of all because sorry, I'm telling too many stories here.
No, keep going, mate. Keep going.
The last season I had at RSL, like, I'm not going to name names, but we were playing against LA Galaxy. It was in the pandemic season. And I was adamant for the 3 years I was at RSL. My last game for RSL was going to be in MLS Cup final. I was adamant. I'm going to do everything I can to get to that. And here we're having a bad season, stinking season, in fact. And and in that game, we had to beat Galaxy to stay in the playoffs. If we lost, the season was over. And for me, that's career over. Yeah, career.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did, on the Friday, we did set pieces. On Thursday, we did set pieces. Friday, we did set pieces. Got sent the set pieces via email. On Saturday, looked at the set pieces again on the charts, went out to play. And then there was a wide free kick. Yeah. And we lined up in a zone, and there was a gap in the front. And I was like, this gap should not be here. Someone's in the wrong position. And we're trying to say, come on, why is this here? Someone should be somewhere. Come on, someone do this, blah, blah, blah. Cross came in, they scored in that exact section. Yeah, we lost the game 1-0. After the game, the person was saying to people, oh, unlucky guys, there's always next season. This is me in my last ever season as a professional.
You, it wasn't.
Oh, mate, my head was clean off.
Flying.
Clean off, flying, mate. Because you know as well, like, when you play in countries and leagues whereby, like, next season is never guaranteed, all those moments really matter.
Oh, of course they do. Yeah.
And I thought to myself, like, we've had 3 days to prepare for this, and this is what's happened, and this is how we've lost. This is how my career ends. But someone's trying to look me in the eye and say there's always next season, when I know that's like, I've got one game left in my career after that. Not this season, my career. Like, it's not busy to know what your job is.
No.
It's professional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not uncool to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But anyway.
There was something very, very attached to that, which I wanted to ask you, was coming over to the States, you obviously had your expectations and what the reality was, you can tell us, but also what What do you think? Do you think the promotion relegation issue over in the States makes things like that you talk about, like the set pieces, just that extra bit less important than if you're fighting for your life and fighting for the fans to stay up and not get relegated, or fighting like you did to get promotion and get up to the next league? Like, do you think those things make a difference in those situations in the game?
I think yes and no. Yes and no. Because for me, the American product is very much the American product. And when you come over, it's not going to change because it kind of feels like the same as other sports that happen in the USA. And some of the bits where you say, you know, when we were fighting relegation, the rush was high, the promotion, the rush was high. But then, like, fundamentally, there'll be lots of clubs that would likely go under if there was relegation. You know, what does it mean to not get promoted? Like, does this mean that you have to lay stuff off? And I think the fact that, you know, in MLS, in USL, it's more sort of like structured and easier for people to understand and to know that you can predict the future. I think that at times benefits them. But what I would say MLS wise, I think there are big games that come, and those big games come in the playoffs. And the players who are switched on to everything, they're the ones who thrive in the playoffs. Because if you have one or two people that don't fully engage with what football is to the like finer detail, they get exposed. And that's why every year, there are probably like 5 or 6 teams who you know will be there at the end, whereas some of the others, they won't. Whether it's a case of what the manager thinks, what the culture of the club is like, or what the key players think. And some of those players can play anywhere in the world and handle those pressures, whether it's pressure of winning a league title, qualifying for Europe, you know, finishing mid-table, finishing, you know, outside the relegation places, playing in front of like 100,000 people in like violent derbies and stuff like this. Not everybody in MLS has that, but there are certain clubs that have more people like that. So I wouldn't say that fundamentally, you know, the league would need to change as such. But if you recruit people that understand that, they can teach the people who are already there who've never felt it before. And I think as a consequence, that can give you a real big edge because it's not the norm wherever you go, I would say.
Yeah. And I think obviously bringing in the bigger players over and the likes of Messi, Suarez this year is obviously bringing a lot of attention. There is one story I would please love you to tell. You may not enjoy telling it, but the clash with Zlatan. Please give our listeners some gold dust with that one.
Oh, okay. So obviously as well, I've got to say, whether people say he's the best or not, Messi's my favorite player ever. So to see him in the league that I played in, firstly, it's very clever of him to wait till I retired before coming over, you know, for the, you know.
He definitely watched your 100-meter sprint back in the day and thought, wait a few years.
It was nothing to do with me. Don't worry about that. But Ibrahimovic, he went to Galaxy, and like Ibrahimovic is like, he's two people. If you Google his stats, it's filth. Like, as a player, it's filth. The stuff he's won, the goals he scored, the impact he's had, the clubs he's played for, it's rotten, mate. Like, he could have a YouTube video that will last 10, 15 minutes of just his goals. If it's just short edits of his goal, that's filth.
Yeah.
But then there's the other side of him where he talks a lot. And some of the stuff he says is, like I would say to my friends who we were playing, would you ever say that? Would you say anything that he said? This is the guy who, when he was in MLS, said, like, I'm a Ferrari amongst Fiats. And I'm like, But I'm looking around and my teammates are laughing. I'm like, what are you laughing at? He's calling you a Fiat. He's talking directly to you. Yeah. He's just not said your name directly. And like, they buy into it. Says, oh, it's the show, it's the this, it's the that. And I think for me, it's disappointing because at times it felt disrespectful. But still, I'd never played against him, but I did respect how good and significant a player he was in terms of world football. So now I'm playing against him for the first time, and it's in LA. And it was like 0-0 at halftime. The game itself was okay. There's not much chatter. I don't know him. He doesn't know me. And realistically, the way football goes, you don't really say much there. And then start the second half. There's like a ball that gets played over the top, so I stand behind him so he can't turn, and so that Justin Glad can get the ball. And then he sort of grabs me by the neck and throws me to the floor. All of a sudden, like, I'm like, what? I was like, what's just happened there? I'm laying on the floor looking up at Ibrahimovic in LA. Like, what? What's going on here? And he's telling me, get up, you so-and-so. I'm like, huh? So most people that know me know I'm quite calm. but there is a switch.
Oh, there's
And
the
the switch,
switch.
the switch went, mate. The switch went. So I get up. I'm furious now. So I'm saying a few nasty words, yeah, directly at him. Directly at him.
Deservedly
Like a few
so
people.
at that
Yeah,
point.
referees asking me to calm down, this, that, and the other. But I'm like, I'm gone here. But anyway, we get the free kick and we start playing. And from then, there's a back and forth. And annoyingly, it was me that was marking him from set pieces. So there's a back and forth where every time he makes a mistake, I'm laughing my head off right next to him. Every time I make one, he's laughing at me. It's like, this is weird, man. This is really weird. Like, how did I get into this situation with Ibrahimovic? It's weird.
Become childish at this point.
Oh no, mate, it's so childish. It's like pathetic. But then I think what made it worse, I was marking him from corners. From corners, he doesn't move. So the ball's out wide or whatever. Someone's about to take it and he just stands. But I'm marking him, so I'm just standing there next to him. But he stood there for 10 seconds. The two of us just standing there, awkward as hell. Mate, looking back, I was like, I needed the ground to just swallow me up. But as is the way with strikers, and as is the way with really good ones, like he scores the winner, and there's a picture of the two of us where, like, I'm sort of looking up to the heavens, thinking, "Oh my goodness gracious me," because we were like, at RSL at the time, we were dominating the game, and he was like playing quite bad relative for him because he was just shouting at his team, telling them how bad they were for about 20 minutes in the match. You're no good, this is no good, and all this. And I was like, this guy is wild. Like, he's the best player on the pitch, and he's currently making it infinitely harder for his team who need him to elevate them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a picture where he's like laughing in my face. But to be fair, the biggest relief is that I didn't see him, because if the red mist came in before, he would have been attacked. I would have attacked him in that moment. But anyway, after the game, disappointed. We lose 1-0 or 2-1 or whatever. I'm walking into the dressing room like furious because we not only was having the back and forth with him, but I think we deserved to win. I thought we were the better side.
I remember the game. Yeah.
Yeah, thought we were the better side. And then sitting in the dressing room, probably 30 seconds later, he walks in. Again, talk about out-of-body experiences. I'm like, what's going on here?
So this is the opposition player walking into
player
your dressing room.
Has walked into our like locker room, and he said, "Have I calmed down?" He looked me straight in the eye and says, "Have you calmed down yet?" And again, I'm like, I don't know this guy. Why is he here? Why is? And so, unfortunately, again, the switch. I guess it's just permanently on at this point. So I'm getting up.
Just keep it on.
And oh mate, I'm so angry. So I'm initially like disappointed after the loss, but then angry as well about how it went. And then he's trying to like boy me in front of my teammates or sun me. So I was like, nah, I'm not having this. So I got up. I think Carl Beckerman got up. Maybe a couple others got up. And we're basically just like telling him to just get the heck out of the locker room or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because I'd only been at the club at that point for just under a year. I think that's when a lot of the players finally understood who I was.
Yeah.
And how things are.
Side to you.
Yeah, because with the stars in MLS, they hold the league up because they attract interest, but they shouldn't be treated any differently to anyone else on the field. Because say, no matter, like, Messi for me is the greatest of all of like my lifetime that I've seen. But if you're playing in MLS now, he's in your league just the same way you're in his. You're not going to play in Messi's like other dimension. You're on the same field as him.
Mm-hmm.
However, whether you came through college or whether you came through Colorado, Colombia, whatever, on the pitch, it's your team versus his team. And if you want to treat him differently, as in allow him to do whatever he wants, you'll be punished, and you're basically just like an NPC in this life, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But go and do something, because you've got a chance to compete, so compete. So he said all that. So that was the first time we played against him that season. And then I was like, well, listen, when the second game comes in Salt Lake, I'm going to destroy him. Like, I was getting ready for this Rocky style, mate. And as soon as
I think I saw you that week in the gym. If anyone knows what a hex deadlift is, this guy had every weight in the gym.
I was good to go. But in the game, he was really nice, and he completely disarmed me. Where this time, every time I did something good, he'd say, well played. And all of a sudden now, this is the other side of Ibrahimovic, to where one of the best players of his generation is praising you for something good that you're doing.
She was buttering you up a little bit.
Oh, mate, it's a huge compliment. Annoyingly, he scored in the game. But I'll tell you what, though, Jack, so did I, mate. My only goal for RSL.
Yeah, get in. Go, describe the goal to us. Come on, what happened?
It was rubbish, mate. It was rubbish. Like, I think there was a corner we had, and I think the ball went towards the edge of the box, and someone kicked it into the ground, and I did like a backward flick header from I think it's probably about 8 to 10 yards out, but it went off like a rocket, mate.
Just the
VAR check confirmed it was in. I think we ended up losing 2-1, but it's like, oh, there's hope, we can do it. But that was my first and only goal for RSL, and I regret the fact that I did not score more. But again, Ibrahimovic, one of the best of his generation,
Yeah.
absolute tool, but then also giving you a compliment. It's like, it's a high rank.
Yeah.
Because as we've heard, he does not give those out very often at all.
Yeah, that must have been humbling, but also frustrating at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so we've probably got about 5 minutes left. I don't want this episode to end. I definitely want you to ask you something. You were on the pitch with probably the single greatest moment of football in history ever. The Aguero. How was that from your perspective? To give the listeners some background, City won the Premier League with the last kick of a game. Aguero scored the goal, and Nedum, you were on the field. What did you see from your angles?
Okay, so for those that don't know my history or my context, so I joined Man City in 1996. Within the next 2 years, they were playing in what is essentially in League One now. They dropped down that far. There were years where there were no Manchester derbies because they were 2 leagues away from playing against them. And City's most significant year to that point in my lifetime was 1999, where they won the playoff final against Gillingham at the old Wembley in what is League One, so Division 2.
Wow.
That same year is when United win the treble, beating Bayern Munich in Barcelona in the final. That same summer, literally a week apart.
That's mental.
Talk about two iconic.
Ends.
That summer was so iconic for Manchester for 2 completely different reasons.
Yeah.
You try and tell us, if a City fan tries to talk to a United fan about 99, do you think they care about Gillingham, mate? You think they care at all? Winning the pens against Gillingham, don't be daft. They literally won the treble. But from then, changes happened, moved to a new stadium, takeover happened. They were getting called noisy neighbours, all this stuff. And I was around for most of this. I was there from 10 until 25, I think. And I'd been at City at the first half of that season. And I saw them building to try and win a Premier League title. And they were bringing in different types of characters, players with different experiences, all desperate. Some of them desperate to win their first title, some looking to win a second. But they knew how tough it was going to be. And every day they were like one of the best group of professionals I ever saw. They affected my mindset from that point in my career because I saw what success looked like. Not what I thought it was. I saw what it was required. Because it's not just ability. There's so many other things as well.
Mm-hmm.
The desire, the drive, the focus on availability, you know what I mean? Like their understanding of the game, the camaraderie, having their backs against the wall, how they respond, all that stuff. But then I went to Queen's Park Rangers halfway through the season. Not necessarily because I wanted to, because I was getting no football at City. I played 1 league game, I think it was, for City that first half of the season. And now at QPR, our penultimate game of the season was against Stoke at home. And we scored in the last minute through Jibril Cisse, which was a goal that put us 4th bottom, heading to City the week after. And now I was still a kind of a City fan. I was obviously a bit upset because the manager had stopped playing me and so on. Mm-hmm. But a lot of my friends now were at City. I knew more people at City than I did at QPR. I've been at QPR 2 minutes. I'd been at City for the 20 years prior, basically.
It was like you were playing against your old schoolmates.
Baffled I was. Yeah. Like, I knew how to play against those players because basically I was playing against them on a day-to-day basis for years. But, like, I'm trying to play with other people now, and I've literally known them for minutes. The club itself is going through so much change, QPR this is. And the game itself, like, at half-time, we were down because Bolton, who were involved in a relegation fight as well, they were winning, and we were losing after Zabaleta scored for City. Being in the dressing room, being 1-0 down away at City, and when you're 4th bottom, and they've dropped 2 points at home all season, that's a conversation where, like, if you look back at it, you all sound high as a kite. Yeah, we'll just do this. We can do this. Lads. We could do that. Yeah, it's like, well, now we've got this. We'll just focus on this, that, and the other. This is a City team with like Yaya Torres, David Silva's, Sergio Aguero's, Carlos Tevez's, all this. Yeah, we'll just do this. Yeah, no dramas. Okay. Next thing, we're 2-1 up, but we're down to 10. And I'm confused now because I'd never celebrated a goal that City had ever conceded. But now I kind of had to do it twice.
Wow.
The most important thing for me was staying up. City winning the title is obviously like great, whatever, but I have to stay up. My future depends on this.
Mm-hmm.
It's 2-1 up, we're winning, fine. It's added time now. And then there's a goal that comes from a corner, which, like, I was cooked. Edin Dzeko scores a header over me to make it 2-2. I'm thinking, crap, this is on me now. That's my fault, that goal. Because we all know, whenever we've, you know yourself, within football, if you make a mistake for a goal, sometimes it's not obvious,
Yeah,
but you know when it's you.
You know. You look to the
You know
floor
when
and you
it's you,
start
mate.
walking to the
Yeah, you
kickoff.
know, mate. Everyone, not everyone knows, but you know, and it's very hard to like discuss it. They might have a big talking point about it, and you just say nothing because you know it's you.
Yeah.
That was definitely my guy, but because of cramp, I could not jump, mate. And then the third goal, and this is a really interesting story to tell now because as the years pass, more information comes in. So on the far side of the stadium, so I've got a throw in on the right hand side, and I'm jogging up. It's the 94th minute.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only me and Jay Bothroyd, the striker, that's up. And he's looking at me, and the throw-in's right by the QPR bench. There's footage from the other side of the stadium which shows, as I've got the ball in my hands, the QPR bench starts celebrating because they know they're staying up. Yeah? So this is like 10 yards away from me. But I've got my back to it.
Okay.
The striker, Jay Bothroyd, is looking straight at me and the guys behind celebrating.
Okay.
So I tell him to go down the channel so I can throw it to him. He never went, but I threw it there.
Oh, yeah.
So he never went because he knew we were safe.
Right.
But he's the only person that knew we were safe on the field. So as I've thrown it and he's not gone, I'm like, oh my God, because now they're coming forward.
Yeah.
I'm like, if this goes in, this is my fault.
Yeah. Yeah. You're on two completely different planets mentally.
But different worlds. I'm like, and from the way the goal is, I never have a chance to intercept it, to go and do anything. Like it's all happened on the other side of the pitch.
Yeah. Once it left your hand, that was it.
Mate, the ball went in. The noise was like bonkers. And I had no idea who'd scored the goal, but I thought I'd just sent my new club down. That's what I thought. I was like, if I could have left planet Earth then, I would have done without a care in the world. But then I looked up and the QPR fans were celebrating. The QPR bench was celebrating. And then it goes from being the lowest point of possibly my life to that point to the highest because now everybody in that stadium is singing and dancing.
That's mental.
From the City fans to the QPR fans to the City players, QPR players. After the game, like, I run to Joe Hart. I'm hugging him because we're staying up. He's congratulating me. I'm congratulating him. He's won a league title. You're seeing Jibril Cisse going up to Samir Nasri. They're celebrating like former Marseille boys. Mate, one of the best moments I've ever felt. And it's the only loss in my whole career and life that just did not matter because the outcome was far greater than the result of the game from my perspective. Because now I've got a chance to see some of my closest friends win a league title and the sort of like United hoodoo, them to win their first Premier League title. But then I also knew where I was going to be playing for the next season. And I'd done enough to whereby like I could predict my future now. I could settle in because it's not a crisis anymore. It's time for a holiday and then to prepare for the next season. And I didn't realize at the time how important a game it would end out to be. And even to add to that. So you see in the stadium, they announced the goal scorers, all this stuff. I was in such a daze, mate. For 2 days afterwards, I didn't look back at video or anything of the game. I wasn't going on the news channels or whatever. So I didn't know who scored the goal for 2 days, mate.
No way.
And then I looked back. I was like, oh, Aguero scored.
Was Aguero?
Did not have a clue, mate. I'm 5 meters away from it. Did not have a clue.
You should have done the same celebration as him and just took your shirt off.
Can you imagine? The best thing for like football's integrity is the fact that game didn't go on for another 10 minutes afterwards because it would have been embarrassing, mate. Everyone just having a quick rondo in the middle of the field with each other. That'd have been hilarious.
That's brilliant. That was honestly beautiful, beautiful story. What a way to finish. I want to ask you one more question, which I've asked with the previous guests, which is if there's one piece of advice you could give yourself at the very beginning of your professional footballing journey, what is the piece of advice?
That is a good one. Do you know, it's a tough one because the people that entered my life that helped my career the most are the ones who I met in the second half of it because they're the ones who were more professional at the time. There probably weren't enough people like that at the start of my career. So it's tough to pinpoint. I suppose it's the pursuit of professionalism I think instead of looking at, say, what city was going on, maybe at that time I could have looked at Arsenal, could have looked at Chelsea, could have looked at youngsters there, could have looked at, say, James Milner, for example, who was starting to start his career at Leeds, going to Newcastle, and been in that 21 camp and really started to use the resources available to me to understand the game more. Because in the last few years of my career, I understood it fully. I understood how the dynamic was, the football politics, the sort of health and fitness side of things, managing press, managing media, managing stress, all this stuff. But as a young person, you think you know what you need to do, but in reality, you don't.
Yeah.
So those resources, whether they are senior pros, whether they're coaching staff, whether it's like the medical staff, whether it's the sports scientists, like use everything around you to give yourself the best chance to be successful. And never forget, one of the best abilities is availability. Because with availability, you can find opportunity. And that's how everyone's career starts. But they just forget sometimes. And they think everything just fell into place.
Might have to steal that quote, mate. Might have to steal that one.
Hey, it's a thing, man. It's a real thing.
We can tell you've been in TV for a while now. No, seriously though, mate, I really appreciate you coming on. I think this will be very fascinating to a lot of the listeners, and no, I really appreciate it. Thanks, Nedum.
No, I appreciate you, man. Shout out to your listeners. Shout out to everyone. And I keep watching flipping Indy 11 on YouTube over here. Good times in USL, man.
Yes,
keep going. Player of the month next month as well.
Thanks, brother.
This is In the Loop with Jack Blake, an Indy 11 podcast. Be sure to like and follow this podcast and check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network. To watch the video of this podcast, subscribe to the Indy 11 YouTube channel.